Dear students, I am Dr. K. Saritha, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology and Social Work, Fatima College, Madurai. In this video, we can see about the nature and types of social groups. Social groups introduction. Humans are social beings. They cannot live independently. They live their life dependently and they live together and form a society. Although they make society, neither they can see it nor can they touch it. But what all they can do is that they can perceive the society. They can feel the presence of society all around them. It is the basic reason behind calling society as an abstract entity. Anderson Parker have given this definition for social groups in this way. Groups are units of two or more people meeting in the same environment or overcoming distance by some means of communication, who are influencing each other psychologically. So the distinctive bond of the group is reciprocal interaction. Friends in conversation, a committee in action, and children playing together are some example for this kind of groups. In this definition of group implies that the relations among group members are not temporary, they are recurrent and influence the other members of the group. That is, members are conscious about the presence of other members. This consciousness of membership influences their behavior and also differentiates a group. Hence, group is not only a physical collection of people or an aggregation, while it is collection of people who shares common characteristics and organized pattern of persistent interaction and are aware of each other's presence. So, in a group, we are not only interacting with one another, but also trying to understand each other and having the awareness about one another in the group. So that is called as social groups. Elements of groups. Recurrent nature of interaction among the group members makes the group one of the most stable social units of the society. They endure for a longer period and make the society sustained. They are important for both to their members and for the society at large. Groups fulfill the needs of its members. They also perform a number of functions like socialization, which is necessary for the maintenance of society. To sum up, the elements of groups are an aggregation of two or more individuals. Of course, the interaction with one another is important element in the groups. Definite relations among the members comprising it. The range of relationship with one another in the group may vary from different groups. Mutual awareness or consciousness is the important element in all kind of groups. Group is a collection of interacting individuals. So the level of interaction can be of many types and group membership can be acquired in a number of ways. So the social groups can be classified in a variety of ways. Different scholars have seen group from different point of views and classified groups in a different ways. There is broad range of facts on whose basis groups have been classified. Some of the chief bases include functions, size, stability, status, rule of membership, degree of interaction, and many more. So, depends upon the size, depends upon the range of relationship among the group members, depends upon the rules of membership, depends upon the functions of group. We can divide the groups into many types. Classification of groups. As we said earlier, we can classify the groups on the basis of the size, range of relationship, mutual awareness. And a very important classification of groups was made by C.H. Cooley. On the basis of his works, two types of groups were identified, that is primary and secondary groups. Although Cooley has never mentioned the term secondary group in his writings, but other scholars have popularized the term secondary group to those groups which do not fall in the category of primary groups. We can see the primary group and the secondary groups in the forthcoming slides. In classification of groups, first we can see about primary group. C.H. Cooley in his very famous book, Social Organization, Human Nature and Social Order, he has mentioned about this primary group. Primary group are those groups in which a small number of persons come in to have a direct contact with one another. So there is a sense of mutual cooperation, companionship and sharing of personal feelings will be there in the primary group. They are small groups because the size of the primary groups are very small in size, and every person necessarily belongs to any of the primary groups. So due to their important nature, they form the nucleus of the social organization. And also he has observed intimate and close social relations among the members of certain small groups and termed those groups as the primary groups. In his analysis of primary group, he has defined in terms of face-to-face interaction, cooperation and association, emotional involvement, identification and sentiments of loyalty more in the primary group. In primary groups, emotions and sentiments carry more importance than the size of the group. Primary group is considered to be a product of long and intimate informal interactions. So the relationship among the members of primary groups are, as in themselves, not a mean to those aims. This is called as primary group as said by C.H. Cooley. What are the essential conditions of primary groups? Close face-to-face proximity. For intimacy to develop, physical proximity is a necessity that is provided best by face-to-face association. It is an important condition for primary group. Next, smallness of the group. Group size is also important. Sensory contact is not possible with many people at the same time. Small group tends to have an individual to come closer and facilitates personal interaction among them. Durability of the bond is the next essential condition for primary groups. That is, intimacy is determined largely by the frequency and intensity of association. The longer people are together, the deeper the contacts between them. So the gradual and regular interchanges of habits and ideas deepen the social ties in the primary group. So the primary groups mean those characterized by intimate face-to-face association and cooperation. So they are primary in several senses, but chiefly in that they are fundamental in forming the social order and ideas of the individual. Cooley considers family, playmates of children, neighborhood and community groups and groups of elders as primary groups. He believes in the universal presence of these primary groups in all the time and all the stages of development. He argues upon the presence of some degree of primary relations in all sorts of groups. This primary association only creates consensus which further adds a we feeling among the group members. So, the we feeling is the another important essential conditions for primary group which will be developed over the longer association with one another in the primary groups. Now we can see about the characteristics of primary group. Primary groups are essential for social life. They play a very important role in an individual's life. They are significant at both individual and social level. They provide the medium through which we learn our culture and patterns of behavior. So they are the basis for our human life. So the characteristics of primary groups can be divided into two broad categories, that is external and internal. External characters include following aspects: physical proximity among group members that we have discussed earlier. The face-to-face relationship among the members is there in the primary group. The size of the group, of course, it is a very small size. The numbers are very less than other groups. The stability and durability is more in primary group. Continuity in the relationship is more in primary group. The next internal characters include common objectives of the group. The group members have the likeness among them and also common interest among them. Next, the relations are ends in themselves, and the relationships are spontaneous and it is a natural one. Personal relationship must be there in the primary group. Inclusive relations among the members is there in the primary group. Control over the members, especially about their behavior, about their relationship and about their inhibiting or socializing the members among the group is more in the primary group. So control over the members with one another is there in the primary group. The importance of primary group. Though the primary relations and primary groups seem to be very important for the society, but it would be over imperative to consider them as ideal for social interactions. At times, primary groups interfere with other elements of the society. At the time of making objective decisions, primary relations create hurdle. For example, if a teacher shows leniency towards a student and gives him high marks which he does not deserve, it would be considered as dysfunctional. Moreover, primary group asserts its control over its members in the form of restrictions, conformity, and reactions. For example, a family provides liberties to its members and at the same time imposes restrictions on them. A peer group fosters the conformity in the group. So the primary group also resists the intellectual, industrial and educational changes in order to maintain its hereditary ties. So at the level of individual, a primary group helps in development of personality and it increases the efficiency of an individual and also it fulfills the psychological needs. At the level of society, a primary group transfers the culture from one generation to another generation. It carries cultural norms of the society within a society, provides means of social control, and helps maintaining the social order in an informal way. And also it ensures the performance of social roles in accordance with society norms. So these are all the importance of primary group. So now we can see about the secondary group. Primary groups, as we discussed earlier, they play a vital role in person's life. However, there are secondary groups which fulfill their maximum needs of human life. In secondary groups, the relations are formal, impersonal, segmental, and utilitarian. Ogburn and Imhoff says that the groups which provide experience lacking in intimacy can be called as secondary group. So, these groups are less intimate as the level of interaction. It is restricted at a formal level. They do not give close identity to its member as primary groups do. In secondary group, we very often interact with people of diverse background because we need their services and we will have certain obligations to fulfill. So in case of utilitarian or contractual obligations, there is no need to develop personal relations. These relations remain based on the reciprocal needs. Hence, members of these groups regard each other as means, not end in themselves. At one hand, secondary groups fulfill majority of the needs of an individual. On the other hand, they also separate individuals' activity from the rest of the activities. Because in secondary group context, every individual is supposed to play his own part. It also segments individual's personality in contrast to primary groups where his whole personality reflects. So, in secondary groups, the relations are formal and it is impersonal and also segmental and utilitarian. The characteristics of secondary group. First one is dominance of secondary relations. In secondary group, relations are impersonal, indirect, non-inclusive, and utilitarian. Members are connected to each other through contractual obligations or interest. Due to self-interest, the individuality develops among the members. Next one is voluntary membership. Individuals are free to join or leave the group at any point of time. That is, membership of these groups are predominantly voluntary. But in case of the same secondary groups like state, membership becomes compulsory. Next one is large in size. Unlike a primary group, physical proximity is not the condition for secondary group. And so, size of secondary group becomes large. They might spread all over the world. For example, members of PETA, that is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, are scattered all over the world. Next one is goal-oriented. Secondary groups are formed in order to fulfill the needs of the individuals. So they serve the special functions in the society. Every secondary group emerges in response to specific purpose and joins the people having the same type of need. Next one is indirect communication. Mode of communication among the members of secondary group is indirect. In many of the cases, group members seldom or rarely or never come into direct contact to each other. They rely on different forms of mass media communication, which includes in the traditional days radio, telephone, television, newspapers, and nowadays movies, magazines, post and telegraphs, and also many kind of social networking. So the people communicating with one another in direct manner. Role decides a person's position in the secondary group. In secondary groups, position of a person depends upon his role. So socially achieved status and its corresponding to role remains the key factor behind the position of a person in the secondary groups. His position is not being decided by his ascribed status, neither he is treated on the basis of his birth. However, an individual fulfills its majority of the needs through the secondary group. Yet, these groups are not exclusive and cannot replace the importance of primary groups. So far, we have discussed about the types of groups like primary groups and secondary groups, and also we have discussed about the characteristics of primary and secondary groups. You may got some idea about these groups, I believe. So thank you for your patience listening.